Hi, this is Mrs. Welch again here. We are now talking about Unit 1, Part 2, which focuses on the American economy and different economic systems out there. The big four being traditional, market, command, and mixed economy. Though we'll talk about later how the United States doesn't really like to be called either or any of those, and what they want to be called. So we're going to go quick. Economic systems, remember, it's just the way the nations are going to be using the resources to meet those three basic questions, right? So we were just talking about this in the last video, right? That right now we are diverting funds to go more into healthcare at the moment. There's been several emergency acts by our president to do that. So we were talking about the respirators. So again, this is perfect to talk about it. So when I talk about these economies, I'll focus on the respirators. That'll be my example. But they have to answer the basic questions. So again, it's what should be reduced, how should it be produced, and who's going to get it, right? All right, let's move on. All right, so traditional economy, and again, you'll have access to these notes, so I'm sorry that it's not big screen right now. It's just better for me going through, skipping, because you'll get to see this anyway. And if I need to change, gosh, what was I going to say? The tabs or anything. So we'll see. All right, a traditional economy, now this is going to be kind of hard because respirators, if we had a traditional economy, there would be a working medical class, manufacturing class that only created medical equipment and their fathers before them, that's what they did. So let's back this one up a little bit. So it's based on habit, custom, tradition, right? You do what your mother or father did before you. There's traditional roles, usually gender roles are influenced in these traditional economies. But there's also the aspect of bartering and trade. Currency is not usually a huge aspect in traditional economies, though it can be. But feudalism in Europe, that would be a good example of a traditional economy. Actually, anything in pre-written historical record, from what we can tell, is probably a traditional economy, and even post-historical record, right? Talked about a little bit in one of my classes about the linear A, linear B tablets. Where they were trading, like it was the tax documents for wheat, right? They were paying in wheat. I don't know what just happened there. We're going to move on. So that's traditional. Today, there's not really too many places that practice a traditional economy. You'll get like nations, and when I mean nations, I mean groups of people, not necessarily a country with borders. So a lot of Native Americans still informally practice traditional economy. You see this in some, I hate using this word, it sounds bad, but lesser economically developed countries. Sometimes you'll see aspects of traditional economy still there. And even in our country, you can still see aspects like some people still work for their parents, right? Or do what their parents do. Some people, there's some industries where you can barter and trade, right? You can negotiate price on your car, right? So those little things are still an aspect of traditional economy. All right, moving on to command. So I often call this the direct economy. There's very little economic freedom. The government makes all the decisions. So let's say a good example is any dictatorship is a command economy. Dictatorships, oligarchies, which are groups of people controlling. So Soviet Union, North Korea, there's several examples. Nazi Germany, right? It doesn't have to be communist. We talked about that in class. It doesn't have to be a fascist. It's just where the government controls every single little bit, right? They control who make or what they're going to make, who's going to make it and who's going to buy it, right? All the questions. So in this case, let's say they would start if our country were a command economy, which it's not, they would start factories creating these respirator factories, right? They would start forcing people to work in these factories, right, and upping the output. They would make the decision how these respirators should look and how they should act, right? There would be no input from the private sector because there is no private sector, or from individuals, nothing like that. And then they're going to decide who is going to need it, right? So what they're making is the respirators, how they're making it, probably usually mass factory, mass production. And who's going to use it? Well, that gets into some morbid stuff, but basically they could choose to do first come, first serve, right? Or do it by age, right? Who needs it the most? Or if they make enough, then everyone's good. But if they don't make enough, then there's a lot of questions answered, right? Or that needs to be answered, and it gets a little awkward. All right, market systems or capitalist economy. So the United States, it's definitely politicians like to say that we are a market economy. We technically really aren't, but meaning that everybody individually makes decisions. So you decide what you're going to buy, you're going to decide what to use. So hospitals will get to decide what respirators and what companies they want to use. Now, right now, you're getting a mixed economy from what you're seeing here because the government's definitely involved. And there's going to be, I'm guessing the government's going to say, you're going to take these respirators to save people's lives. But that's getting into mixed. But in a market economy, they could choose, like, oh, we don't want to take the ones made from Procter & Gamble, right? Or we don't want to take the one, I don't know who makes medical equipment. We don't want to take the ones from this company, right? So they have the choice. And in a market system, the companies would have choices like, well, I don't feel like making respirators, even if there is a need for it. They don't have to, right? And remember, markets are voluntary exchanges of goods and services, right, between buyers and sellers. Here's your circular flow, which right now we're seeing get interrupted. I like this one. It's messier, but I like it a little bit better. If you want 1,000 different pictures that tell you the same thing, put circular flow of economics into Google image search. Seriously, here you go. I'll show you. Circular flow of market economy. Yeah, look, so you go to images, you can see somewhere I've taken them. I mean, come on. So you've got about 1,000 that you can look at. The idea is that it's a seamless circle, right? So businesses provide wages, income payments to consumers because consumers work for these businesses. And then at the same time, consumers are spending money on these businesses. The labor part really comes in here. Consumers are the labor, right? We all work. I'm working right now. You guys might still be working your jobs, though I know right now things are kind of tight. But people provide the labor, right? Land, you can sell your land to a business. Capital, right? Your experience, management, and so on. And then the businesses provide goods and services back to those consumers. So it all flows together. But right now, you're seeing an interruption cutting straight through here, and that's COVID-19. I wish I'd bought the drawing. I'll probably do it later. And that's interrupting this, so businesses are being forced to lay off people, right? So they're not going to be able to provide as many goods and services, especially in the restaurant industry. And consumers are being told to stay home, right? They're like, stay home. So they're not being able to provide all of this stuff. And that's going to affect this outer circle, right? Because if you're not employed, you're not getting income, right? As a consumer, you're not receiving the income. And if you're not receiving income, you're not spending money on businesses. So keep that in mind. This is very relevant. Mixed economy. So we are closest to a mixed economy, but don't tell any politicians that. They get all angry. don't do it. And I'll give you the official what we are in just a bit. But a mixed economy is a combination of all three, but mostly a command economy and market economy, though you have aspects of traditional. And this chart here, if you guys can pull it up, it tells you a lot more. So right now you're seeing a lot of good examples of a mixed economy. The government is stepping in with this crisis, right? They're wanting to cut $1,000 check to every household under making $150,000 or less, right? That was as of today. So if that changes, I'm sorry. March 20th. So we'll see. The government is stepping in, trying to force more respirators being made, right? That's the government stepping in. But the free market is still able to occur, meaning there is still choice available. All right, I got to move on for time. Remember that for a market system, you have capitalism, laissez-faire are very much tied in for the market system. Laissez-faire, though, is where the government doesn't interfere with the economy. So right now is not a laissez-faire time. Government is very much interfering. Capitalism is the economic system in which private individuals own the factors of production, and that's still the case, which gives more credence to we're a mixed economy. But the government is ordering, right? So ordering some of those companies not to lay off people or to keep paying their wages. They're bailing out certain parts of Wall Street, right? So this means we're not currently actually using this. So we're actually, I'm going to skip all the way to the bottom. We're something called a modified free enterprise system. It's our fancy way of saying a mixed economy. We don't like saying mixed economy because that reeks of socialism. And we tend not to like that just historically. And if I had more than 3 minutes left, I would totally go through that, but I don't. If you want to talk to me later, and I'll create a discussion page on Google Classroom. And if you have any questions about that, I can talk more about that later. So what are some aspects? We have profit incentive. We all want to make money. We have the ability to own private property and control most of what happens on that private property within legal reasoning. Our country encourages competition, sometimes doesn't interfere to help encourage competition. We have several goals, right? Economic freedom. You guys have the choice to do what you want, to be as efficient as possible for number 2. Equity. Laws regarding economics should be fair, that everyone has the right to an income or to invest. And security, this is what you're seeing a lot of right now. So social programs to help people attain basic needs in case of hardship. Moving on, economic stability. So that's why putting $1.5 trillion into our stock market was an attempt to keep things more stable. It remains to be seen if that'll work. Economic growth of the economy as a whole. We want to be growing right now. Unfortunately, we are not growing due to this pandemic, but that's probably to be expected. And rights and responsibilities, of course, people, that's like all in the government's end, but this is for us. We have the right to choose what we want. We have the right to behave responsibly. We break the law, we go to jail, right? And it's our responsibility to elect good government officials. And the last thing I'll say, very important for what's going on, is positive versus normative. So I'm about to be cut off. Positive economics, remember, is what the numbers actually are. But normative is the opinion. So right now, you guys are getting inundated with normative economics and normative news, really. So my last bit of advice before being cut off by this program is to definitely pay attention to the positive economics. What is actually happening? Look at the numbers. And with that, I'll say bye, and hopefully I'll be able to make more of these later for future lessons.